6 o'clock, we'll call the joint meeting of Human Services and Finance to order. We'll take roll call for each of the committees. Mary, would you call finance roll? Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here. And Supervisor Gaschke is excused.
Yes, and we have youth and governance here, and Charlotte is excused.
Member Spatula here.
Yep.
For Human Services, Supervisor Franco,
Here.
Here. Supervisor Kirby. Here. Supervisor Nees,
Yeah, she's excused.
Supervisor Nordigan,
Present.
Supervisor Poole,
Here.
and Supervisor Newhouse. Here.
Three of my YIG students are not here. Oh, no, two. I believe Aksa, you're not here, right? She's
You're not-
You're not here. Rogelio is not here. So we have two, YIG students not present.
Okay, we'll move on to citizens' comments. Any citizens wishing to speak? Any citizens wishing to speak? Any citizens wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. Human Services and Finance Administration resolution to split the Division of Aging, Disability, and Behavioral Health Services into two divisions, to be Division of Aging and Disability Services and Division of Behavioral Health Services.
Hi, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for letting us come tonight to talk about our proposal and the resolution for this division split. My name is Rebecca Dutter. I'm the Assistant Director of Human Services. And most of you know Tammy Capito. She's the CFO for Human Services. We're here tonight to talk about splitting the Division of Aging, Disability, and Behavioral Health into two separate divisions, which would be the Division of Aging and Disability and the Division of Behavioral Health. The reason that we're requesting this is because we're finding that we are serving two very unique populations. So the aging population, as we all know, across our country is growing rapidly. It's the fastest growing part of our population, and they certainly have very distinct needs. There's been a very big push in the state of Wisconsin to work on keeping people home as long as they can with services. So the services on the aging and disability side have certainly expanded over the last 10 years. On the behavioral health side, we have struggled with behavioral health having an identity in the county of Kenosha. For years, its name was not even in the title. In 2020, 2021, we added that into the Division of Aging, Disability, and Behavioral Health Services. But people aren't really aware what the behavioral health team does for Kenosha County. And that has become an area where we have seen pretty large growth. And again, people are seeking more services, which is a great thing. But as people seek services, we need to find and show them where the open door is for where the county sits at the table related to behavioral health. Human services can be very confusing. It can be a complicated system to try to navigate, in particular when you need assistance. And when you don't know where to go, or you don't know where that open door is, I think we make it even more challenging. So by doing this, we actually allow behavioral health to have its own identity. We welcome those people to the front door of Human Services to say, we are here to support you. We talk about why is now the time. Well, Tammy's going to talk about why now the time is right budgetarily, but the time is right now because we have an opportunity to be able to expand the services that we provide in behavioral health with the use of our opioid funds. The use of those opioid funds, that's a big job, and it's become too big of a job for one division director to oversee. These are, again, two very unique populations that come through our front door. And we need to have a plan for those opioid dollars so that we are using those in the best possible way to meet the needs of our community. It's almost an impossible task for one division director to be able to do both things, or one unit. This request only adds one additional FTE to the split, and that is the division director. And again, Tammy will go through, how we're going to be able to fund that. But I guess I also want to let people know that this is not, this is a topic that we've talked about for many years, probably 10 years, that we knew the time was going to come when behavioral health needs were going to come to the forefront, and we were going to have to create a division that was dedicated just to the needs of those folks, which is completely different than the needs of a lot of our other programs. So now it feels like the right time to do it. We can do it without we can do it with budget neutrality, which is an excellent opportunity for us. And it allows us to expand our presence in the community before we move into our new building, so that when we are there, people know exactly where they can come for behavioral health services and where they can come for aging and disability services. So we can certainly meet those unique needs of the population that we are serving. And a population that is expanding greatly as we speak. We have more people coming through the doors. So I'm going to have Tammy go through the budgetary changes, and then certainly if you have questions, we're certainly here to answer any of those for you.
So on this sheet that should have been in front of you, we have the dollar amounts that are associated with this change. We are proposing it starts August 1st, so that's the 41.67%. And the appropriations in the budget mod, it's all rolled up to appropriations because it's a lot of accounts that we had to change, but we've got it rolled up to the appropriation level. And then I'm just going to talk about the lines that have costs or savings. And then if you have questions on any details, just let me know. So
Could you increase the size on the screen up there so we can read it?
thank you.
Thank you.
So the first line is the Division Director for Behavioral Health Services. So at the 41.67%, that's 56,000. We will reduce a mobility manager 1.0, and that's a savings of 12,000. We have some just miscellaneous bucket of 2,000. The building rental with where we're going to put everybody, we had to take over some common space. So there's an additional cost there of 2,000. We have a senior accountant position that's in the Brookside's budget that I have not filled because I didn't really feel it was full time. So we're going to split that between this division, both aging and behavioral health and Brookside. And that will be a contracted position. So it's not adding to the FTEs, but that is 21,000. And then we've got the NJM contract. So that's a contract we were utilizing this year. We only signed a 6-month contract. We hired a quality analyst who's now working, and we've already got that going. And then this is the rest of that credit. So 61,000 credit for that contract that we're bringing in-house. And then the opioid funding. So with this additional division director of behavioral health services, she will charge her time that she's working on the opioid functions, and then we will be able to draw down revenue for that. So as you can see, for this partial year, our projected adjustment to levy is a savings of $6,875. The next page talks about the FTE counts. So it's no change in FTE counts. We've got the behavioral health and aging is 17 right now currently in the 2024 budget. And then we've got the addition of the director, and then we've got the subtraction of the mobility manager. And then everything else underneath that is just moving from aging and then going into behavioral health services. There are already existing positions in the wage scale. And then the next 2 pages are the org charts. So the new org charts for behavioral health and aging and disability.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Committees will open it up to questions. Supervisor Nudo.
Yeah, you have some of the money we're gonna be using is from the opioid funding. How long is that gonna last?
So, right now, we've got 4.7 million in there. It's making about 15,000 a month. And I think we're expecting to have about 15 million at the end, but I don't know.
Some of the streams are different. So there are some of the settlements that were 9 years. There are some of the settlements that were 18 years. So there's a possibility of a maximum of about up to 18 years where we will continue to see some amount of funding. Certainly not at that level, but some stream of funding.
Which will be how much, because with the additional director, basically it's gonna cost more money than what we have now. We're probably gonna have to, as we go along, we're gonna have to add other people. I don't know if that was looked into it. Because we changed for half of the year, I can see by changing and using these numbers, but I'm sure that coming next year, this numbers are gonna be quite a bit different. So just to saying that it's levy neutral, it sounds right, it sounds good, but it's not true. And I think we gotta stop doing this where we wanna make a sound that it's not gonna cost anything or everything. It's really, no changes or whatever. When we know we're going through some of the stuff, not going into any details, but we're going through some of the stuff that a couple of years ago I was arguing on that because we did not have it. And everybody said it was, gonna be fine. Well, we got problems right now. So, and that's what I see at this year. I think we need more clarification and to come in and sometime in July, when most of the people are on vacation or something, and say, we're gonna start doing this in August. I don't think it's fair to anybody to do that. So. Basically, I think we should have more information or it should be done more, what's the real thing it's gonna be. And then for so many years, it's been when we're able to do it. I know things increase and everything. But how the heck did this come out just in 1 minute? And I know the money from opioid that we can use. There are so many other things that we can use the money for. So. That's it for me.
Okay, Supervisor Kirby?
Yeah, so I guess I'm gonna kind of piggyback on Supervisor Nudo's question. My question was gonna be, going forward, what are our projections? Is this as simple? We can say this is gonna continue, at 100% going forward. Do we have numbers showing what this looks like 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
So, obviously, we don't know projection wise. I mean, every year we have a new budget, we have new funding streams, we have new expenses, we have increased expenses. It's hard to say, this is where we are at now, this is where it's at with 2024, where we would land. The opioid funding obviously has added a lot to the workload over by us as well. We've added a whole kind of new subdivision handling the opioid dollars. So, a portion of that should help to cover that. I don't see, I still think it's levy neutral. I think the opioid dollars are gonna last a while, but it all depends on what comes in the pipeline. What do we want to do with that money? What initiatives are we going to take to fight the epidemic?
So if we were to just assume that everything stays the same, like assume that what's happening right now, that's go forward, do you think it would be drastically different in the future? Even with the opioid funds, this is, roughly $14,000 for 41% of the year. Do we feel like 10 years from now that's going to be, we're not going to have any opioid funding for that? Well, I know you can't tell, I know you can't see the future, but just kind of an estimate or a guess.
I mean, we have projections. Patty provided those to me as we were sitting here. We have projections through 2038.
That would be good to see.
So I'm happy to.
Well, the reason I didn't hand it out is the report that I have there is somewhat limited.
Okay.
Because it doesn't include some of the funding streams that we know are coming.
Right.
Okay.
We've been getting payments from Mallinckrodt, they're minimal, but they're not included on this projection.
Okay.
So what I do know is what is shown on those sheets, the distributor payments are to continue through 2038. And the last year is what,
376,000, correct.
Overall, between the distributor payments and the pharmacy payments, it's a total of 15.5 million for that entire period of time.
So it would cover the opioid funding director. Okay.
And there's more settlements that are still out there. You're going to hear about one later in the finance committee. I mean, there's still more settlements coming in. These are the manufacturers, and there's more settlements that are happening across the country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Supervisor Gearston?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I first looked at this, it looked like I would want to support it. because it does, address, I remember the history of the two operations. I remember when we created the aging department. I remember the first director we had, and I remember them getting merged. I was in a department that got merged. So I went through all of that, and this seemed like a good move. But it seems like we're talking about a fiscal cliff because we're using dollars that won't go into perpetuity. So through the chair to the finance director, and you did touch on this, is there a fiscal cliff where you see us having to do a big levy increase at some point, or is this sustainable for a period of time where you're not going to have to increase the levy materially in order to implement it?
At some point in time, the opioid funds will run out. The opioid funds will not fund 100% of the positions, so there will be some levy impact even in 25. Not, I don't believe material, but there will be some. As Tammy pointed out, these funding sources are coming in. We're also investing that money. And to date have earned 138,000 on what we've received. So there, although the interest is not going to offset the expenses, depending on what is decided, the life of those opioid funds is more than 2038.
So would you say that we have at least 5 years of burn rate on this? So we have 5 years of burn rate on this. This isn't, this looks feasible. But thank you. I yield.
Supervisor Nordigan was next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess getting away from all the funding and all that, let's look at what's the goal? I know the goal is to reduce the amount of people on drugs, opioid overdoses and all that. Do we have a measuring stick, if you will, as to where we are, and we can measure how successful that this, the opioid money and just our process that we're putting together will be? Is there some sort of milestones that we're looking at hitting,
Well, yes. and no.
reevaluating, hitting and reevaluating things?
Yes and no are gonna be the answers. So we can measure things like death. You know, we know how many people come through our medical examiner's office that pass away from opioid. It's hard to measure prevention. It's hard to know when we're out there talking about that, how, if someone didn't pass away, that's not a number we can collect, right? So, I mean, we have to look at the measurables that we can look at. You know, we can look at arrest rates, incarceration rates, we can look at death rates. We can also look at people who participate in some of our MAT programs.
Okay.
You know, are people coming out of the jail that are receiving services now, or are those services increasing? So yes, we have some measuring sticks, but I don't think that we are going to ever have one number that we can say, we want to get below this.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that's what we're getting. I think we want to see trending lower and
We
trending
do.
lower and trending lower on all of those measures.
Absolutely.
But have we put together something like that, or is it already in place? Here's how we measure success of a program, or in particular this program, so we know that the reducing amount of these measurables is saving money over here,
So we.
whatever it is. I
Right.
don't know what it could be, but.
Right, so for our grant programs, like our MAT programs, there's measurables that are built into those grant programs. But we, with the funds being relatively new and us having a division that is really spreading out around a lot of different topics, we need this time to be able to have somebody to put together a plan.
So that is going to.
Put in measurables, correct, yes, so that we have a plan for, you know, how are we going to do this? What has been successful? You know, we can look at what other counties have. We've got those and we can say, this has been successful. You know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel if we don't need to, but certainly every community is different. So what's going to work for us? You know, we do have a new position that we are putting, that was new last year, where we're going into the high schools and middle schools and we're talking about these. We're going to see those measurables down the road.
Right.
Again, it requires a lot of work, intense work to be able to do this right. And I think we all look at this funding as this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to get ahead of a problem that our community is continuing to go down and we need to do it right.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to know that we
Yeah.
are looking at
Absolutely.
measuring that, making sure, because maybe it's just a small adjustment to get us where we need.
Right.
I don't know. You're
Right.
the experts on that. I'm sure that'll all come out.
I think it's multifaceted. We've got to take it from a bunch of different approaches. Yeah.
And then just a second thing, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
completely unrelated. Charlotte and John, Youth and Governance, did say they weren't going to be here at this meeting. I asked them to forward that to different chairmen, they might not have done that, so they were excused from last month. They must not have contacted you, John.
No, they didn't.
Okay.
I sent
They
an
did,
email.
and I asked them to contact you too, they must not.
No.
Okay,
Anything else, Supervisor Nardi?
that's it, thank you.
We've got Supervisor Brown up next.
Yeah, through the chair to the finance director, 2025, there will be a levy impact, and what will that be? Is that,
I'm
did I
not sure
mishear that?
exactly, because Tammy's the one who did the analysis about what we expect we can draw down. And I did not think it was 100% of that salary.
No, we're gonna do actual time studies, so it'll be her actual time spent on the opioid dollars. We don't expect the levy to necessarily cover. We've got savings from the NJM contract. That we're no longer contracting with them. We brought stuff internally, and the savings from that will help offset that. So we do not expect a levy increase from this in 2025.
Okay, so if a time study shows that 50% of the time of the behavioral health director is spent in opioids, are you gonna come back to this body and ask for 50% to be covered?
No,
No, I didn't think about the contract that was gonna help to offset some of it when I made the comment about the fund. And any future would be part of the budget proposed to the position and the estimate of funding by then. The fact of that this would be put in place now gives an opportunity to start to see how much time is being used to give an estimate to be used in the budget of what would be drawn down from what would be drawn down.
Yeah, so you just restated my question in a different way. So not 50%, 30%, 26%. Is that gonna be floated in a year or in October? That, oops, we miscalculated and it's more than 25%.
That is not our intention. We have budgetary savings to be able to cover the rest of that salary. So our intention is not to ask for an
2026?
increase. It's not our intention at all.
Okay. Supervisor Poole, you're up next.
Thank you. Looking at the charts up here, I'm trying to figure out in a full year, what is the amount we're gonna take from opioid funding to fund this? Which page are we on?
for a full year. I have 33,750 of the opioid funding covering it.
Yeah.
Supervisor Poole?
That's all, thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Franco?
Yeah, I was just curious. You had mentioned there's $4.7 million in opioid funding.
Yeah, so,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, what's the interest that we're earning on that money?
So, the last month for May, we earned 16,000 on it, 16,500 on it. So right now, year to date through May, we're averaging, 10 to 15,000, but it's growing.
Okay.
We're getting another payment in July. I don't think we've reached
So,
the July.
in other words, 1 month's interest payment would cover the 6-month transfer from the old.
Oh, yeah.
And
What's
that
the,
will continue to grow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
A couple months ago, took, the lion's share of the opioid funding that we received and we invested it in a longer term investment that was paying a higher interest.
what's the rate that's,
rate. I don't remember, Barney, do you remember? It was 5 or 5.5%.
It's fine.
no, it's not bad.
And then we thought, okay, we left a little money to be used for expenses that we knew were in the budget. And then we found out that we were getting more than we expected in pharmacy payments for the year. Like a month later, we got $1.6 million. I was a little bit ticked because I would have timed things a little bit differently. We've not done something special that is sitting in the LGIP right now. It is earning interest. It's just not locked into that higher interest rate. We need with the investment guidance. So
So it's a permanent, well, nothing's ever permanent.
No.
But it's 5%, give or take.
for a period of time, and we may do something similar with some of the additional funds, knowing that we have more coming in and projecting out what is being used. We don't want to tie up too much and tie the hands of the plans that might be being. So we've not tied them up for a significant amount of time. I honestly don't remember exactly how long we told them on that.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Belsky, you're up.
As the former chair of Human Services Committee, I just want to say this is long overdue. Long overdue, and I'm glad that it's happening now, and I fully support it. I think it brings clarity to our community, because people would always ask, who do I call there? And it was very confused. It's very confusing to the public on who do they see, who are they going to be talking to? You know, getting confused on, well, I don't have disability. So I think this is a really, really good move, and I think the numbers support it. So I ask for everyone's support. That's all.
Anybody else wishing to speak on this? My turn. So do we have current expenses we're spending for our opioids? Somebody to handle that? What does it cost us to handle those funds now? And you said we have more work. Is there anybody tied to that work?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't add new people to handle the expenses. We have one fiscal manager and one accountant. So handling everything for aging and disability and behavioral health.
Right, okay. So I had questions about the 5 months and the 14,000 that have already been answered. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of spending opioid dollars on salaries, but this more than compensates. I mean, I think this is a good way to spend money, and I would be in favor of spending money, even if it was levy dollars, for these programs. I think at some point we have to look at what we actually are here to do, and that's serve the community. And I think that this is a pivotal way for us to help do that at low cost and maximizing efficiency. So I believe if you look at who's going to be using these programs and how it's going to work, I think you have to take a step back and say, boy, this makes a lot of sense. So I am going to be asking you guys to come back next month to finance and talk about opioid dollars, how much we have, where they are, just to enlighten everybody on that. So that'll be an educational piece I'll be asking you to come back and do. I have nothing else. I'm fully in support of this, and I think that it's a good idea, and it really aids our community. Supervisor Franco.
I agree. I think this is a good idea for all sorts of reasons, but if you're just looking at the numbers, if we're making 5%, we're making $15,000 a month in interest. Over an entire year, that's $180,000. We're just paying transferring 14,000 for a 6 month or 33,000. That's a differential. I mean, that's like 150,000 plus, even if we're using this opioid money, which we are. So we're not, the interest is paying for this. I don't see from a financial standpoint, it's a good deal. Not to mention all the other reasons that you mentioned. So I'm fully in support of it too.
Any other questions or comments by either of the committees? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. We'll take a roll call vote. We'll do finance first. Youth and governance. Yes. Supervisor Noodle.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm sorry, a point of,
All right, never mind. Back up the train. We need a motion on the floor.
I would so.
Forgive me, all right? I got it. We need a motion on the floor.
I knew something was missing.
Mr. Chairman, I
It's like a little road runner going,
on
man.
behalf of Finance Committee, I so moved.
It's been moved by Supervisor
I'll second
Pearson and seconded by Supervisor Franco. Now yes?
Yeah. We had someone walk in too.
How do you vote? Aye, okay.
Oxa.
Aye, okay. Any other youth and governance?
No, I don't think so.
Want to vote? No, just kidding. Okay, finance.
Aye.
Aye. Supervisor Nudo.
Can I make a comment on- with my vote?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
well, I expressed my opinion before, which
Mhm.
I am, still the same opinion. However, I believe it's something that we're gonna need. It's just in the way it was done that I was against it. So for that reason, reluctantly, I'll say yes.
Okay.
Don't forget me.
I'm on to you. You're after Nudo. You're right in line. Supervisor Brookout.
Hi.
Aye, good. Okay, that takes care of finance. It is unanimous. Supervisor Franco, you're up.
Aye.
Your committee.
No.
Okay, you're.
Yes. Okay.
Move that. Do we have to move it in?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Separately?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Second.
Okay. I didn't even make a motion. Hold on. Yeah.
But didn't you second their motion? Are you even on the?
I second your motion.
You can,
Yeah.
You're having a joint meeting.
yeah.
They have to vote separately, but only one motion is necessary.
Okay. So those in, human services, those in favor, say aye.
Oh, we have a roll call.
A roll call vote. Who we go? Guida.
Aye.
Mark.
Yes, or aye.
Aye. Sarah.
Aye.
Aye. And I think
And
that's
John.
John,
John
John.
Monica. and Monica.
Aye.
Too many people
Yes,
here.
well, and they're all over. Yeah, we're having camaraderie here. That's good. That works.
Thank you.
All right, they both passed unanimously. Thank you. At this point, if I could have a motion to adjourn these two committees.
so move.
It's been moved by Supervisor Gearston, second by Chairwoman Uhas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Third person, Chairman.
Chair lady.
All right, we're adjourned.
All right, good night.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate everybody coming. Good questions, actually. Good questions.
You have to, but you can walk around.
Thank you, sir. They're good questions. Good. And I agree with you. Like, I always We're gonna call the finance meeting to order. Citizens' comments, any citizens wishing to speak? Any citizens wishing to speak? Any citizens wishing to speak? Seeing none, citizens' comments are closed. Reports from the chairman, I have none. Reports from the committee, anybody have a report? Seeing none, approval of the minutes, June 13th, 2024.
So move.
It's been moved by Supervisor Geertsen, seconded by Supervisor Nudo to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are passed unanimously. Number 6, Public Works Facilities, a resolution for amendment number 1 of the lease agreement between Kenosha County and City of Kenosha for installation of a communication tower to allow for the installation of an emergency siren within the existing easement. It's pretty long.
Good evening, Shelley Billingsley, Public Works. This is, there used to be an emergency siren located at the former Fire Station 4 that was removed at the time that that building was demoed. It's my understanding the city didn't want it relocated on that fire station, so working with the emergency management team, we were able to relocate a nearby property that we have currently have a lease with City of Kenosha near their Nash Park. So we have gone forth and requested that we can amend that amendment to, or request an amendment to add another pole to install an emergency siren in the nearby location. So this amendment before you just allows us to have another structure which will be used for that siren.
Anything else?
Staff recommends approval.
Committee?
So approved.
Moved by Supervisor Nudo, seconded by Supervisor Geertsen to approve. I don't, is this gonna cost us anything?
No, they're not.
I've looked through this twice and I don't see anything.
There was a nominal fee in the beginning,
Oh,
one, and they're keeping that same nominal fee.
okay. So it's not gonna cost us anything to build that and to put up a new siren.
Yes, there is money in the budget to add a pole and a siren. So I think it was approximately 30,000, if I remember correctly.
But it's already been budgeted and already
Correct.
approved. Okay,
Correct.
okay. Also, you were present at the meeting with the emergency management?
Emergency management came to us with the location, so yes.
Well, that's what I want to make sure that, you know, we're putting it in a place that gives us the proper coverage.
Correct. They looked at the location and the radius coverage of the emergency sirens. And they found that this was probably the best location within an area that we had property.
Okay. Ongoing maintenance.
Just the operation of the sirens, which goes over to emergency management, so they would continue to operate the siren as they normally would.
Okay. Supervisor Belsky.
As Vice Chair of Public Works, when we went over this in Public Works, it was determined that site was actually better suited than the previous site because there was too much overlap into the east side of the city. So this site was actually much better because it crossed over Highway 31.
That's what I want to know. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anything else, committee? It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Youth and governance? Okay. You think you're getting away with it? No. All right, thank you. It passes unanimously. Thank you. Number 7, Public Works Facilities request for the approval of the plat and relocation order for the County Highway WG Bridge project over the Dutch Gap Canal and authorization for the Highway Commissioner or Director of Public Works and Development Services to acquire the necessary highway right of way and temporary limited easement required for the project. Village of Bristol. Go ahead.
Shelley Billingsley, Public Works again. Yeah, so we needed to enhance the typical section across the bridge. This bridge has aged, so what we used to have as far as the cross section between travel lanes and the emergency clear zone we need to extend that bridge out to create the existing typical cross section. So to be able to do that, we needed to purchase additional right of way. And then on one side of the bridge, there was additional drainage issues that we had to take care of to ensure we had proper drainage. So that would require a TLE. So the plat is in front of you for moving that project forward and getting that right of way that we need to then complete the plan set for bidding and reconstruction in next year's budget. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Then it's already in the budget, correct? It's already in the budget. Okay. Because Patty just slipped some new little thing where she puts a little X mark on the thing that I didn't see. Now I see that.
Now, the resolution form had box.
Yeah, well, I didn't look at that. Okay, committee. Any questions or comments? Seeing none? Can I have a motion? Motion to approve. It's been moved by Supervisor Gama. Seconded by Supervisor Kirby. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, Corporation Council, a resolution authorizing Kenosha County to enter into the settlement agreement with Kroger Company and agree to the terms of the addendum 2 of the MOU allocating settlement proceeds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, supervisors. I did send this information out about 2 weeks ago, right before I went on vacation, with a little bit of a cover letter explanation. For some of you, this is sort of familiar news or old news. For some of you, it's new, and it's actually kind of fortuitous that it's happening on the same night that we were talking about the division split. Back in 2017, the county board approved a resolution to hire outside counsel or to retain outside counsel who were involved in, I'll just say, huge litigation against opioid, primarily manufacturers, as a result of the opioid crisis and epidemic that's been hitting everywhere. This was done on behalf of municipal governments across the country because of the additional costs and expenses that were being accrued by those governments having to deal with these issues. About 4 years later, the first significant settlement was reached. That was with a couple of manufacturers and I believe one distributor. Back in 2023, we had a second round, which we're now sort of moving more into distributors and pharmacies. And then a couple of months ago, we received word that now this is a third round of settlement with one pharmacy chain or distributor, and that's the Kroger. So it's significantly smaller than some of the ones we've seen before, but it is a new round of settlement. What makes these cases somewhat unique is that although they feel in many ways like a class action suit, they are not. They are individual actions being brought on behalf of individual municipalities across the country that are essentially bundled together for purposes of administration and settlement. So we have to, this isn't a thing where we've opted in because we're part of a class. On each individual settlement that is proposed, we need to affirmatively approve entering into that settlement on behalf of Kenosha County. There is a fairly complicated set of formula that figure out what we're going to get. I can neither explain them to you or tell you what we're going to get. I will defer to Patty, but the short version is that Wisconsin, really as a leader in the country on this, passed what was probably one of the most beneficial to local governments statute. In many states, the state and local governments were doing a 50-50 split, or in some cases even a 70% split to the state and 30% to local governments. We have a split in Wisconsin where 70% of the money that comes into the local governments, or excuse me, 70% of the money that comes into the state is going to the local governments. 30% is retained by the state. That's an incredible benefit to local governments on the, I think, very reasonable grounds that we are the ones on the front lines really dealing with these issues. The state legislature, in passing that, has to approve these settlements through the joint finance. They've done that in the past. There's an agreement with the attorney general none of that is changing. The only piece that, that we are doing here, in addition to approving the actual settlement terms, is that there is an MOU amongst all of the participating municipalities. It's all of the counties and then a handful of villages and cities. There again, and I think that information is in there. It explains exactly what the split of that 70% that's coming to the local governments is amongst all of the participating municipalities. Ours comes out to 3.17, something like that, of the total that's going to local governments. Again, none of that is changing. We're just continuing to use that same formula that has been worked out. Again, the basis of that is a complicated factor of population, number of cases, dollars spent, et cetera. I don't pretend
Just
to
blame it on
know
IT,
all of it,
all
but
right?
so the fact is, as I said, this really, this is a boon to the county. It is money that we would otherwise not have. It certainly is more beneficial than our trying to pursue these cases individually. In the interest of full disclosure, there is, of course, attorney's fees involved. We are required to escrow a portion of what comes in the event that the monies from the settlement itself through the court are not sufficient to pay the attorney's fees. They will attempt to get their fees paid through the initial round of monies. If for some reason that is insufficient, then we're escrowing a portion of it. Again, that has not changed. The same process we've used for the last two tranches, or the last two settlements rather. And it is capped in as much as we are not going to, in any event, have to turn over more than 25% of anything we receive to the attorneys. Again, that is in itself also tends to be a benefit. Often when you're working on a contingency basis in these matters, it's often a third. The attorneys not only capped it at 25%, but sort of unofficially, they've really tried to keep it at 20. Because again, they as well, I'm not going to lie to you, they're not doing this to be public servants, but they're also very, very cognizant of the fact that these monies should be left at the local level to actually fight the opioid epidemic. And in fact, there was a note that I was seeing today that I believe they were indicating that they have to date settled for something like $51 billion against various defendants, and they are continuing to pursue these cases as they go forward. I can't tell you how many more settlements there might be. I can only tell you the one that's in front of us, and I am asking this committee, and then hopefully with this committee's approval, the board to authorize me to accept the settlement on behalf of the county, and then we'll move forward. I'm happy to answer any other questions from a legal standpoint if you have them. Patty can speak in more detail if necessary about the finances, and I did ask representatives of Human Services to be here in case there are questions about how we're spending the money that we've already received. There are very strict, I say very strict, wide-ranging, but strict requirements. As I've said the last two times I've made this pitch, we have learned the lessons of the tobacco settlement of the 80s, where lots of money flowed into state and local governments and was used to plug budget holes and was used to do everything other than deal with the problems of the tobacco industry and smoking. The monies here have to be spent on opioid cessation and opioid related matters. Again, we have a lot of discretion within those categories, but this is not money that we can spend on other items. So.
This is my favorite time to see you, when you bring money to us.
Exactly, yes.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make the motion.
Second. It's been moved by Supervisor Nudo, seconded by Supervisor Gearston to approve. Supervisor Poole?
Through the chair of court counsel, did you say there was, the lawyer fees were approximately 20%? What did you say?
What I've said is that they've indicated that they intend to cap their fees at 20% of the total settlement.
Thank you for that clarification. No more questions.
Supervisor Gearston?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through the chair to the finance director. Just try to remember the big picture. Is it 750 million? That's
Right here.
Okay, 750 million that is flowing into the state. So is that the rough number now? And then this will add a little bit to that, or?
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me. What I do know is based on the information that was provided I did do the calculation of from what the state is getting, what the county should get out of this, mind you, spread over 11 years. Total, we expect about 800,000 from the settlement. So that gets added into, that's why I didn't want to hand out that other sheet I have that totals the 15.5, because this is not included. A couple things are not included. So this would be on top of
So
it.
this adds another 800
Correct.
to the fund.
The other thing that would adjust it also, if other counties opt out and don't, that would also adjust that.
Yeah, I know there's a lot, but so what's the total now with this?
With this, it would be, we'd be at like 16.3.
All right, I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Patty. I yield.
I'm sorry, and I should have said, and I apologize. Yeah, the total settlement, not to us, but the total settlement is about 1.2 billion that's spread out over 11 years. And I also should have said, I think I included in the email. This is all based on a piece in our time approach. I mean, the money that goes into that settlement increases as the more people agree. If entities choose not to settle for whatever reason, less money goes into that pot because, you know, they're looking to be done with it. So if the maximum participation would result in about 1.2 billion over 11 years to everyone, and then like I say, Wisconsin would get a chunk of that, we would get a chunk of the Wisconsin chunk. Chunk's a fun word to say. Yeah.
Any other committee members? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. No further questions or comments. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 9, Court Counsel, an ordinance amending MCKC 3.63, granting a former owner the right to repurchase property taken by tax deed. Court Counsel.
Thank you. So I'm actually going to make an odd request in a second, but as way of background, there have been some changes in the law, both because of Supreme Court decision as well as a change in state statute that requires us to update the ordinance that we had in place, which at the time we passed it was something that we could do voluntarily, but we're not required to do. We're now required to have one that permits a previous owner who has lost their property through the tax deed process a chance to buy it back. Attorney John Moyer from our office, who works closely with our partners in the county on the tax deed process and has been sort of our expert in this area, had worked up what he believed were the necessary changes to the ordinance, and the intent was to present those to you tonight. Having said that, the WCA is working very hard to try and make sure that as much as possible, these ordinances, again, which are now required for every county to have, are going to be harmonized across the state. To that end, I believe they're preparing I'll call it model ordinance. When we receive that, we're going to compare that to what we have, see if there are changes that we think we need to make to the Kenosha draft for one reason or another. And to that end, it's my request of the committee tonight that we table this until the August meeting so we have a chance to complete that process, at which point I anticipate that we will either say, yes, we're going forward with the draft in front of you, or here are the changes we need to make.
So do we want to defer it till August, or do you want it tabled until you get the information? What if it's not here in August?
Attorney Moyer was very comfortable with the idea of putting it over till August. So,
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to postpone this resolution to our August meeting, a time certain our August meeting.
Okay. It's been moved to defer this till the August meeting by Supervisor Gearston. Is there a second? Supervisor Kirby. Okay, any questions on the actual motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll see you in August.
thanks.
Bring one. 10, finance, a resolution authorizing and providing for the issuance of not to exceed 18,780,000 general obligation promissory notes. Providing for the notification and sale of said notes and other related details.
Good evening, I'm Greg Johnson from Ellers. I'm going to go through the pre-sale report, which you have a copy of, which summarizes the proposed issuance of the promissory note. The narrative portion of the report kind of provides detail that I'll back up with my written comments and the tables and the analysis. So I will start with table 1, which follows our narrative, which is the detailed list of project costs identified that'll be financed through this note issuance. The total project cost is $18,578,000. I know staff has some comments about the projects themselves and some of the adjustments that are referenced in the table. So, Mr. Chair, would you like staff to address those now or after I go through the rest of the?
No, you go through the presentation and they'll address that.
Okay, very good. So we'll start by going through the summary of the county's existing general obligation debt outstanding that can be found in table 2. In the far left-hand side of that table is the total principal and interest payment due annually for the county's existing debt outstanding. The city budgets several non-levy revenue sources to help cover those debt service payments, primarily revenue from the city of Kenosha, Brookside, and then money in the debt service fund from past debt issuances that have a premium. So for example, for the 2024 budget, the debt service levy was $19,604,335. We just show how that levy will change based on the county's existing debt outstanding. In subsequent tables, we will look at how the levy will change with future debt issuance for capital improvement projects. On table 3 is the sources and uses for these proposed notes. The total amount of the borrowing is $18,780,000. Annually, at the time the county adopts its annual budget, the county board passes initial resolutions which grant borrowing authority for capital projects. And those resolutions are good for a period of 5 years. When the county actually is prepared to enter the bond market, we identify how much of the projects are going to be applied to each of those initial resolutions that were approved previously by the county board. So in this year's borrowing, we are providing that resolution authority across 5 resolutions that were adopted previously. Those are all listed across the top of table 3. So again, the total amount that you're borrowing is $18,780,000. That'll be applied to 5 different resolutions that have been passed previously by the council board. In table 4 is the estimated debt service schedule for the proposed notes. All of the debt service will be repaid by the county's debt service levy. We break down the debt service by each of the resolutions to kind of coincide the borrowing amounts to the prior resolutions that were approved by the county board. So you'll see each of those resolutions that kind of carried forward all the way through table 4. And then you'll see the total amount of principal again is $18,780,000 with estimated interest expense. The total debt service is $23,274,443. We are taking current rates in the bond market and factoring in about 35 basis points cushion, which is 1 basis point is 0.01%. We've seen interest rates in the bond market remain very stable over the past couple of weeks, so we've not been seeing yields increase, but we like to always build in a cushion between now and the date of sale, which will be on August 20th. In terms of the overall tax impact analysis that can be found on table 5, we have built out debt issues all the way out for long-range planning purposes through 2033. You're only authorizing debt issuance for the 2024 capital projects, but we typically like to look at debt issuance in a multi-year context. So this shows future capital borrowings, again, through 2033. And you'll see in the far right-hand side of the table under the heading debt service levy, total net debt service levy, that shows what the total levy for debt service would be for existing debt and all the proposed debt issues modeled in this table. So you'll see the debt was structured so that each year the debt service levy would increase by approximately $1,120,000 per year. And the far right-hand column, you will see kind of the estimated tax rate per thousand for debt service. You'll see that the tax rate remains stable at about 87 cents per thousand for debt service. So again, you're only considering the 2024 projects. We show the future borrowing just for planning purposes, so we can structure the debt to kind of have a consistent budgetary impact year over year and keep that tax rate for debt service relatively stable. The other metrics that we evaluate in terms of the county's debt policies can be found on table 6. First, we look at the county's general obligation debt outstanding. The county has a statutory debt limit, and then it also has an internal policy metric that it tracks in terms of looking at the total principal outstanding. So the statutory debt limit is 5% of the county's total equalized value. For the county's internal debt metrics, which I'll speak to in a moment, the county backs out any debt that was issued previously related to some past refundings, debt related to the city of Kenosha, debt related to CAVA's High Impact Fund, and debt related to the Brookside facility. So we have that net principal outstanding, which is how we evaluate the city's debt metrics. But in terms of the remaining statutory borrowing capacity, that's found in the far right-hand column. The county has more than ample borrowing capacity legally to fund capital projects going forward. So in terms of the debt metrics outstanding, and in terms that we evaluate every time the county issues debt, those are summarized in table 7. There are 3 primary metrics that we look at. The first is the adjusted debt burden, which the county's debt policy says that should not exceed 0.8%. You will see that, the county is well under that threshold, even if all of the financings modeled through 2033 were to occur at the dollar amounts identified. So the city is well under its adjusted debt burden. In terms of the debt levy as a percentage of total expenditures, that's not to exceed 15%. Again, even with all future debt issuances out through 2033, that's projected not to exceed 10%. And then the tax rate for debt service on an equalized basis should not exceed $1.50 per thousand. With all the future debt issuance included in this model, that debt service levy is not projected to be higher than 87 cents per thousand. So in terms of those debt metrics and those policy targets, the county is under all 3 of those metrics, even with CIP financings built out through 2030. So the final table in our pre-sale report monitors an objective that was established last year that the county wanted to see the gross principal outstanding at the end of 2022 be reduced by 5% by 2032. So with all those future borrowings that we modeled in the plan, that objective is still being accomplished. That by the end of 2032, the total principal outstanding for existing and proposed debt, a little over 151 million. That's a 5% decline from the roughly 159 million of debt outstanding at the end of 2022. So in terms of the debt issuance process, we're at the beginning of that process, which is consideration by the Finance Committee. Then this will go to the county board for their consideration next week. If the sale is decided to proceed at both committee and county board level, the sale is anticipated to occur on the 20th of August, which is the date of a regular county board meeting. Anticipated results will be presented to this committee that evening and also presented to common council, or excuse me, county board that evening as well. And the resolution that's on your agenda this evening just requires a simple majority vote for approval. So that concludes my comments on the pre-sale report. I'll either take questions now or if staff wants to make comments on the project list. I'll defer.
Greg, the only comment that I have is we will need a special finance meeting before the board meeting on August 20th to consider this.
Okay. All right, any questions by the committee? Supervisor Geertsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through the chair to Greg. Do I remember reading somewhere that the state of Wisconsin changed the law on the 10 versus 20-year notes?
That's correct. So this past March, a law was signed by the governor that changed the statutory length of term of a promissory note from 10 years to 20 years. Previously, notes with the term up to 10 years, anything greater than 10 years up to 20 was called a bond. So generally speaking, notes provide a little more flexibility in terms of issuance under statute. So really going forward, you likely will be issuing promissory notes exclusively.
So when we would build major projects, we would use bonds, and they would be much more restrictive. And now we don't have to do that.
That is correct.
Just issue a 20-year No, it's probably still good. Was there any, it's probably still good to stay with the 10-year term though and keep that,
Correct, if possible. So a lot of your initial resolutions in the past were written legally to say the county could issue notes or bonds, so you kind of had that flexibility. Bond council may still choose to leave that flexibility in going forward, but I think practically, note issuance is how it'll legally be done going forward.
So when we approved, is it okay if I continue, Mr. Chairman? Okay, thank you.
You have the floor.
Thank you. So we approved, funding, or the financing for the human services building. And, do we have flexibility to issue that as notes?
Yes, you have flexibility to issue that as notes.
That's a pretty good benefit to us
Yes.
to issue that as notes. I just wanted to be sure that language, that those initial resolutions we authorize, allow those to be issued as notes.
Yeah, there's flexibility. So I think if most of the resolutions always had either notes or bonds for a lot of your authorizing going forward. So you had that flexibility.
Very good. And if I read this right, we're looking at roughly $1 million levy increase for our debt service.
Correct, $1,120,000.
Subject to the, do we issue with are you looking at issuing it as a premium or a discount? And then, if the rates come in lower and we did build a cushion, that would most likely come down.
Potentially, I think it depends. So you could also, if you still left that levy target at $1,120,000 change and you got a premium, that under state law, that premium has to go to pay interest expense on these notes. So since your interest expense would be less, you could amortize the principal more aggressively in 2020, which would lower your overall debt service costs over 10 years, but still keep that levy change about $1,120,000.
And for this type of an issue, are you seeing it come in with a premium?
Most likely. So we always include the option for an underwriter to submit a premium. So what a premium is, the analogy I always use is it's when you buy a car and you get cash back. The car dealer gives you some extra cash up front that you can use to reduce your borrowing or your loan for the car. It's the same analogy with a note issuance. The underwriter is willing to pay you a higher amount than the $18,780,000 that you're borrowing. You use that cash to partially downsize the issue and cover interest expense. The trade-off to the underwriter is they can maybe have a more attractive interest rate that they can market the bonds to their investor. So they're giving you some extra cash on cost to offset some of that cost of that maybe higher interest rate that's more attractive to the investor.
Very good. Thank you. That answers my questions. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kirby.
So this is just out of curiosity. So all of these numbers are using today's dollar value. So it's not like the net present value of cash in the future, correct? So like this wouldn't account for inflation year over year. So like this $151,000 in 2032 that $151 million for combined principal existing and proposed. That's as if in today's dollars, correct?
It's based off of a fixed dollar amount that you could borrow on an annual basis to arrive at that amount. So
Okay.
we kind of backed into how much could you borrow on an annual basis out through 2033 to have your total principal outstanding be reduced by 5%. So it's a fixed dollar amount. I think to your point, if you borrow $20 million in 2024 and you borrow $20 million in 2029, you may not have the same purchasing authority. Yeah, but just if I understood your comment.
Yeah, that was my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, when I was meeting with Barna, I did ask him what projects were going to be put off. If you could kind of highlight that for us.
Sure. If I could direct your attention back to table 1 in the presentation, the pre-sale report. And in the column of adjustments, you'll see a number of numbers there in red. So I'll go and detail each one why those adjustments were made. So just to take a step back for everyone, in recent years, what finance has determined that it makes more sense, it's more prudent to borrow the amount that we need. It better matches, rather than just blindly borrowing what was budgeted. Through the note, we would
With the
work
increase
with the
in-
department and go through each project and say if there's projects that won't be undertaken in 2024, but in the next year in 2025, then we wouldn't have to necessarily borrow those funds and then match the borrowing up with the year in which it's spent. So this column is the result of that work. There's a little more administrative work in us having to track things that we don't borrow for, and then the next year we do, but the benefit outweighs the obviously additional work. So to go through the detail, the generator replacement, there was 200,000 in the 2024 budget. That was an additional amount that was put in the budget. As they were expecting that generator project to come in higher. With the numbers that came in, they don't need that 200,000, so we're reducing the issuance by that 200,000, so it's not a pushing off, it's a reduction.
So it's elimination.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
The next one is replace roofs, cold storage radio tower, KCC. That was initial project that will not take place until 2025. So that is one that will push off that 50,000. Replace roof at KCDC. That was again another instance in which there was an additional 100,000 that was budgeted. Thinking that we needed that additional to finish that project. It is not needed, so that is a clean reduction. The radio system redundancy project, there's 170,000 that we reduced it by. The 170,000 we'll be using remaining ARPA funding. When we did the 2023 closeout, we identified that as one of the things that we would use ARPA funding this year. So the net would be that we would borrow 50,000 toward that project. The next is HVAC replacement for KCDC. We're reducing that from 950 to 550. That is another one that I believe, double check with Chris, was that one that where the amount came in lower? The HVAC for KCDC?
It's just more the cash spending of it, the phase broken out.
Oh, that's right.
Phases so far. So this final phase will likely be more spent in 2025, so we won't be at some assumption.
So it qualifies as a pushing off for that 400,000.
Well, we're not doing things. The project is moving forward. We're just not gonna spend it until, okay, thank you.
Correct.
All right.
Next one, underground storage tanks. We had budgeted 467,000 of borrowing, and we had about $300,000 of surplus funds that we had. When the bids came back, that project came in higher than what the project was. So that project will be moved to 2025. So that's a move to 2025. Pike River Phase 3, that's 1.8 million. We're waiting for some grant, an answer to a grant that was written to go toward that project. And that we'll get word of that in January of 2025. So that project also will not take place in 2024, it'll be 2025. The next two single axle truck and tri-axle trucks, those are items that are difficult to get still. We're proposing reducing those dollar amounts and pushing that back, but we will borrow 100,000 as we're expecting. I think we've already taken ownership of one of those single axle trucks. And the last one I'll talk about is County Trunk Highway K reconstruction. This is Phase 3. This is the phase of the road that is closer to I-94 and will be in the area of the casino. And obviously there's a lot of questions that have to be answered before we go that route with that project. So we're going to back that off for that 200,000. So right below that one, you'll see a few that were added there that have different budget years there. So you see one for Brookside generator replacement, 2023. That was something that we pushed off last year. That work was being done this year, so we're adding that 500,000 back. Next one, HVAC replacement, KCDC is, as Chris noted, that project is being worked on now. And we need that 1.9 to match up with the work that's being done this year. 200,000 for County Trunk K, the phase 2 portion, closing that up. We need to borrow that 200,000, so we're adding that. And the Brookside roof replacement project, we put that off from 2022. We're adding that back in of 488,000. So with that accounts for things that were taken off and then things that were added back in to arrive to the $18 million total.
So back to the trucks.
Yes.
Did we purchase one of these?
Yes.
Is one of these crossed off? But the 300,000, is that gone?
The 300,000 one is that we did not get any of those.
Okay.
Yeah, so the reason that you're seeing 100,000 there for is because we were finally able to get into a build slot and
Finally able to get what?
a build slot for trucks. So the issue with the trucks have been that I think going back to 2022, we haven't even been able to get a build slot, so we've been sitting on some of this money, so some of it has been pushed out and not used. But now that we finally been able to get to it, the cost to purchase it is now higher than what it was 3 years ago. So this 100,000 is helping fund the overage of the 2 trucks that we finally got on order.
Yeah, but they are ordered.
2 of them are these trucks here are not. We're still funding the trucks from 2022 or 2023.
So every year we put off not ordering them, we're gonna have more money to pay?
Right, but we can't get a build slot. It's not like we're not trying to get them. We're trying to get them.
Yeah, are we in line to say when you can get it, then we'll go forward?
What I've heard with talking with some of the highway guys in 2025, there should be a potential for 4 build slots, which will bring us much closer to in line of spending all the money that we had the authority to and hopefully get online those shorter trucks every year.
Okay. The reason I ask these questions goes back to the HVAC over the public safety building. I mean, we put that off and we ended up spending probably $1 million or more on it down the road because we didn't move forward. We just wanted to say we wanted to save it. That's why I dive into all of these to make sure we're not pushing them off just to say, oh, we want to cut our bonding or that type of thing. These are legitimate things we're not going to do. So, you know,
If we could
okay.
get a truck, we would gladly pay for it.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right.
2 things I'll mention. We are just now getting to the point with the sheriff's department where the squads are on track. I mean, at the end of 24, they actually now have their 24s. They got their 22s, their 23s, and their 24s now. It was a partial 22, partial 23, but that's how the vehicles have been going. So the trucks aren't there yet. The build schedules aren't quite there yet. Supply chain is still an issue. And also, we didn't do this when we were borrowing at record low interest rates and we had no supply chain issues because we borrowed the money, it was a very low cost and the builds were happening, the projects were happening, squads were coming in, we were spending the money that we were borrowing. Interest rates went up and supply chain stopped. So it did not make sense to borrow money at a higher interest rate when we can't even spend it. So now we do this analysis every year. Or what are we actually going to spend? And that's what we borrow.
Okay, cool. Any questions? Do we have a motion on this?
I would move approval.
Moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Supervisor Nudo. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Finance Resolution Advisory Levy.
But I'll take that. So Just for background information, this is a resolution that is required. It is a county board passed resolution that administration bring forward this advisory levy resolution each year. It has followed this format generally over the years. I'm proposing an adjustment to that. And in checking the rules of the resolution, it does allow for finance committee to make an adjustment based on what is approved. So if I could draw your attention to the second page that has the figures on here, the advisory levy forecast. So starting at the top, it starts with the adopted county levy for 2024 budget. That was a 2.72 increase at 75,882,000. Some change. So we've done some projections on costs that will increase in the 2025 budget. For the personnel expense increase, we're projecting a $2.3 million increase based on wages. The pay plan that we have in place. Debt service increase of 1.1 million, as Greg had pointed out in his presentation. For health insurance and prescription cost increase, we're projecting that at this point at 600,000. For sheriff's department, revenue adjustment of 450, that would be a revenue reduction, so that would be a 450,000 increase to levy, and an operating increase regarding the inmate medical and inmate prescription lines of 350, so a combination of 800,000 for those two. Human services non-personnel operating expense, that's a typical levy increase year over year. We put a figure in here for net new positions levy. Obviously that needs to get worked out, but I'd like to build that in as a reasonable amount from year to year. For public works, non-personnel related operating expense increase of 275. It seems to land in that range over the years. Joint services, budget increase of 150,000. That works out to be about 2.75%, which is about the range that we've been in the last few years. And then lastly, a projection of 75,000 for property insurance for the county. So in addition to that, I've listed some levy decreases projecting going forward conservatively, looking at general fund interest revenue. We've done well there. Much more analysis needs to be made, but I feel comfortable in putting that in there as a potential reduction to the overall levy. There potentially will be some dollars left for ARPA revenue or reserves related to ARPA funding. So I put that into the mix. Workers' compensation decrease. We've projected to be able to take that down, and that's what we've built into our early models. Given that to the departments early on. These next three, I didn't put a dollar amount there, but I put that just for discussional purposes. The federal marshal inmate daily reimbursement rate, we still have not received word of any increase of that, but if that increases, that would be a reduction in levy. The net state supplemental aid payment, we've done some early looking at that, and there was a large jump last year in that, and this year, based on the increases and decrease, it looks like it might be flat to what was in the 2024 budget. And then sales tax, we've only gotten 4 months this year. We're probably flat. We are flat with last year. So we're projecting potentially to leave that as the same as 2024. With all that being said, that would mean a 5.225 increase to the levy, going up to 81 million, which would be a 6.89% increase. Obviously, that's not what we're going to be going for. So this year, administration is proposing putting in a range of 2.53 to 2.95. So how we arrived at those two figures, 2.53 is the average that we've had in the last 10 years for levy increases. So that could be the baseline. and 2.95% is the percentage for net new construction. So in this way, we're pegging this levy increase to known factors rather than speculating and picking a number at this point. At 2.53, the net increase to the levy would be 1.92 million, and at 2.95, it would be 2.24. In order to achieve those two percentages, that reduction target number there, that 3.3 and the 2.9, that's all the work that we do from August till October 2nd to get to those percentages. Toward the bottom there, the resolution requires us to put in figures regarding CPIU inflation for the last 12 months through May 2024. That was 3.3%. So an inflation adjusted break even levy would be a 6.25%. Obviously, again, we're not going to propose a 6.25, but so with that being said, at the bottom, the estimated taxes on $100,000 home in 2025 with either end of the range of 2.53 or 2.95 would still show a reduction for taxes for the county taxpayers at that rate. The other thing I'd like to point out too is just like what Greg pointed out on the bonding capacity, we also have a large levy limit capacity as well. We have almost $19 million of levy capacity. What that means is with the levy limits, some municipalities are at the top level, and each year their figure that they get for their net new construction is basically dictates what their levy can go up. Our levy can go up at whatever level we need, and we still have $19 million that we could still levy in addition to the 75, 80 million, and we would still fall within that levy limit. With that, I will open it up to any questions.
Okay, in the past, we've just done a number for this, and they said you come in there or lower. In my talking to Barna, I mean, they always hit that number, so it doesn't really matter to me if we put a range in or not. I'm inclined to do. I wanted to hold the line at 1.99 this year, but with things that we've got out there, I think we're gonna have to go a little bit higher than that. So I will be comfortable going up to 2.49. So 199 to 249 is a range that I will support. So, and I've heard all these numbers and I appreciate all the work Barna has put in, but a lot of them are moving pieces. So with that, Supervisor Geertsen was first, then Supervisor Newell. Supervisor Geertsen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, my question was going to be something different, but now that I heard the comment, how much would that reduce the levy if we knocked, like a 0.5% out? How much would that increase the gap here?
It'll be 375,000.
375.
Yeah.
So it would turn that number, that gap number to 3.6 then.
And it would only, a 1.99 would allow for less than $1.6 million levy increase.
So, what I heard the chairman suggest is knocking a little over 300,000 out of this whole deal here. Because we would put the top end of the range up to the 2.49, right? Correct now. So
that's what I said. That's correct.
Right. Good. I heard that. Right. Good. So, I mean, we're looking at 300,000. I mean, I guess once we get into finance committee, we could consider that. And if it doesn't seem feasible, we can put that back in, I mean, push it back up to the 2.5 or 2.9%. I know I think last year the board didn't adopt this.
Yeah, nor the year before.
Yeah,
Last year it was filed. The previous year it was brought to the county board and it failed there on the floor.
but still in finance committee, we did recommend ideas that came out of finance committee to help us get to the number that the finance committee wanted, and you're looking at some of them here, so this workers' compensation decrease, we worked on a project there that helped reduce that, and we pushed pretty hard, and that came out of finance committee, and we worked with finance and HR and with administration, and so we were able to get a levy reduction there. The ARPA, one thing that we did at Human Services is we recommended a review of the food contract, and it helped reduce the deficit and helped leave some of that ARPA money so that we could use it for levy reduction. I know there was other stuff affecting that too, but we proposed an overall strategy change to Brookside that changed the way we handle the beds, and that also helped with the ARPA. We cut 2 positions as far as levy. One of them we cut, and one of them we pushed off the levy and funded with capital project money that we in Human Services, we cut the levy for child support by working with Representative Ned Wesky and the state and WCA, and we cut levy there. So we did a lot of stuff in our committees to get to this number. So if we are going to cut the number that it's coming in from, I could think about 10 other things we did that helped cut the levy, but if we are going to cut this 300,000, then we need to have it come also from our committee here the same way it did last year. So I'm okay with it, but we would need to have the ideas for levy cutting come from committee. And with that, I yield.
Thank you. Supervisor Noto, you were next.
Well, nothing new that I've been against this resolution for many, many years. I was always against. I believe I always will. In fact, tonight I'm going to vote against it, whether we put it 3% or 2% or reduce it by 1%. I believe the county executive, she's going to work on the budget. It's her job, and I'm sure she's going to do well. Come up with the best budget that she can do it. And then once we look at it, that's when we can talk whether we should take that, like Supervisor Gersten said, we can cut some, whatever it is. But for us to say, we want to keep it at 1%, I'm just throwing a number there now. How the heck do we know? What if she comes in at 1.5% then? Well, for things that we need to do it, we're going to have to do it. So it seems like, why are we doing that? So let her do, or whoever the county executive is, then do their job, come in with the best proposal on the budget. And because they know what's going on, they'll be working with the committee, with the departments, with committees, with finance. And once they do it, then we can see what happened and make a decision whether we can cut or try to find some, on what we can do it. I think and that's why the last 2 years, 2 years ago, it was, I believe it passed as finance, but it was rejected on the board floor. And last year it was completely rejected at finance. And I believe there was a lot of discussion about taking it out completely, but then it was not done. So for this, I'm going to be against this resolution, and I hope everybody else will do the same thing and wait until we get the budget, and then we'll decide we believe it's fair or what we think should be done. It should be done. Thank you.
Supervisor Kirby.
So I guess I'm again piggybacking off of Supervisor Nudo. So I guess my question is why are we asking for like a set percentage or a range of percentages prior to knowing what our budget is? Is this a timing issue where we need to know this ahead of time? Is there any particular reason why we come up with this figure, you know, prior to having that budget finalized?
Sure, I can give you, some, before they jump in, I'm gonna jump in. So the reason is, in the past, I mean, before even executive cruiser, there were numbers of 7, 8, 9%. And they felt that the board should be as fiscally responsible as possible and give a recommended levy limit increase or amount. So, and that's been all the way from 2010.
I think it was 2005.
Yeah, it was.
The resolution.
Yeah, before I started. So, and they believe that it's good for us to give administration a number that we're gonna be comfortable with. It is advisory. I mean, if this county exec or the next county exec comes in and says, look, I can't do it. All right, you can't do it. Let's see what you got. But, I think, you know, to work together and make it go as smooth as possible, we've always put forward a number. So that's a little bit of the history of it. So.
And I actually have one more.
Keep going, you got the floor.
So, my next question, is do these figures account for the changes in property valuations? Cause I know the city of Kenosha changed them and it had been a while. So property values went up significantly. So do these calculations account for that at all? Or are we using, you know, pre-evaluation property values?
Sure. So the numbers that we use, so I refer to the net new construction. I always refer to as the pie. That is the pie of all the costs, all the values of all the homes. Net new construction is how the pie grew.
Okay.
Each individual house or whatever portion that slice grows with that, and that's takes that into account. What your home is appraised at or the value, that all that changes depending on how it in comparison to your neighbor.
Yeah.
And all that. So that it's not an apples to apples, but in general, that's why we use the net new construction as the.
Supervisor Gears.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can give a little more background because I'm the one who invented this thing, like, I don't know, quarter century ago or whatever. It's, so there was this initiative sweeping through the country called Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And I think it started in California and it ended up being things like Proposition 13 and, you know, freezes of tax levies and that kind of thing. And so that was sweeping through, it got into Kenosha. There was a couple supervisors that grabbed onto that. And they ended up working with the administration at the time. And this ended up being a compromise instead of that kind of a harsh tax freeze. I think one state may have actually adopted that kind of a thing. It might have been Colorado. But this really was just a compromise so that we didn't have a really, really harsh tax freeze that where it really was being contemplated and imposing through hard rules, Taxpayer Bill of Rights. But the thing I'll say is we say it's advisory, but in years where the administration came in with something that deviated from it, we got really harsh. The board got really harsh, and we ended up whipsawing and reducing even more. So we might say we're advisory, but it's a pretty hard number. At least that's what happened. That's what has happened in the past.
Thank you.
I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Have a motion? I'll make a motion since I'm not precluded from doing that. I'm a member of the committee. I'll make a motion that we send on an advisory levy limit to the county board from the finance committee at 1.99 to 2.49.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by me, seconded by Supervisor Kirby. Any discussion on that? Okay, we'll take a roll call on that. Mary?
Supervisor Gens,
Aye.
Supervisor Nudo,
Oh,
Supervisor Pearson,
no.
Supervisor Brookhouse,
Yes.
Supervisor Gama,
Aye.
Supervisor Kirby.
Aye.
So it passes.
Youth and governance?
Youth and governance.
That's nice and I'm kidding. Okay, passes. So that's what we'll be sending to the board. Thank you. Moving on, number 12, discussion and possible action regarding the email sent to the county board regarding public works and human resources. I put this on here because I feel that we're gonna get a lot more anonymous communiques, emails, because of the veto by the county exec to be able to fire division heads at will. So I don't think people are gonna wanna speak up as much. So I just felt that it does have pertinent information to finance and administration, and I thought we should take a look at it. By no means am I saying it's all correct or anything like that. I just think we need to do our due diligence and look at it. So I know you were all forwarded it, or you got it, so I don't know if you have any questions. But I'll open it up to the committee to see if you do have any questions. Supervisor Kirby.
So I guess I would say my biggest questions that come out of it are how are we measuring employee morale on an annual basis? Because really that's the best way. Anonymous emails, we don't know who those come from. But if we are doing something measurable every year or on a quarterly basis to see how people are feeling about their jobs, how they feel about their pay rate, how they, you know, how appreciated they feel, that's really the stuff that I want to see to know how things are going, because employee retention is important. Turnover is very expensive. Hiring new people is very expensive. Losing that knowledge is very expensive. And so that definitely impacts finance. So
Anything else?
do we, I guess just what do we have in place?
Claire, do you want to address that, please?
Sure. We do monitor turnover rates.
Yeah.
Which for 2023, our turnover rate is the lowest it's been since 2019, with the exception of 2020, which was COVID and traditionally people weren't moving. We do not do employee surveys, active employee surveys to attempt to measure that piece. But we do actively engage with managers in terms of performance evaluation, feedback, one-on-one, that kind of thing, and try to stay on top of any issues they may be having in their divisions.
I guess my question is that something we could be doing though? Because sometimes I wonder, like, do the managers know? Are their employees willing to speak up and say, hey, I'm kind of miserable and I don't feel appreciated? You know, sometimes even just doing this every other year is a good way to get a beat on, okay, what can we do to improve things? I mean, beyond pay, because pay is not, I mean, obviously pay is why most of us work, but that's not the only reason we work somewhere, right? If we feel like we belong, we feel like our contributions are valued, you know, stuff like that's, it's important to get that idea. And sometimes managers may think their employees under them think everything is great. And that may not be the case. So is that something we could be doing going forward, or?
So we do encourage stay interviews for those divisions that can accomplish that. And,
okay,
you know, those take resources.
Yeah.
For example, the new HRIS system that we're looking to implement in 2026 had a module that could survey employees. It was very expensive and it ended up not making the final cut in terms of what we could before. But we do not have a platform specifically for that, a tool and to make the resources to. Yes, exit interviews we do, but.
Yeah. But yeah, exit interviews, those are people who are leaving. So you're not really getting a good cross section because you're missing out on all of those people who decided to stay.
Yes. Okay. I think exit interviews are important. I mean, I certainly want to know why you're leaving. And I mean, you know, we could say that, oh, it's just disgruntled employees or some, this, that, and another thing. But I think if you do an exit interview and you talk with everybody, it should even out. It shouldn't be the only ones that want to fill it out or not, or have that interview are negative. I mean, I have to hope that Kenosha County puts out workers that, you know, are going to be happy having worked here and they're moving on for other reasons. And I've been looking to have exit interviews done for a long time. Where are we in regards to that? How many do we do? I mean, is every department required to do them, or where are we with exit interviews?
We do the exit survey, which you get those quarterly results for the Finance and Administration Committee. That's in your packet today. Those are provided to all employees who leave. It is a voluntary participation. We do allow anonymous participation in case there's an employee who needs to share something that they're not willing to identify themselves. And then employees are also offered exit interviews. And we do a number of them. And we do get valuable information. And you are correct. They are not all negative or people that have access to grind. We do get a lot of good feedback. People move on for a number of reasons.
Okay. Supervisor Belsky.
With regard to exit interviews for the chair to Clara, who does the exit interviews? Are they face to face? Are they distributed by that department head, or are they done by HR?
Generally, it's HR that does them, with the exception of the sheriff's department. There would be other staff, it's not usually the person they report to. There's other staff and KSD that does.
And how many have you done in this past year?
I don't have that number.
Could you get that number for me, please? Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Gearston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Clara. When I was here, we had a leadership program that we contracted with a company to try to get at this kind of a morale thing, to try to bring people together. What was that called? Were you here when we were doing that?
Are you talking about living as a leader?
Yes.
Yes.
Are we still doing that?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be a good conduit to help address this kind of a circumstance? Maybe not.
Well, in terms of,
Well, what Sarah talked about, trying to learn how people are currently in their jobs versus just the exit interview process.
so as part of that, and what is encouraged for all of our managers is to have regular tag ups, one-on-ones with employees, talk to them, not just at an annual performance evaluation, but to really understand day-to-day what's going on with those employees. Yes, that is part of that program and strongly encouraged. They teach how to have those meetings, constructive feedback, peel back the onion, get to understand what motivates and where employees want to go.
I mean, the kind of thing we saw in the email here would be addressed head on if that process were being used between the supervisor and the employee involved. If that would be addressed, we would never have to send an email like that. Anonymous email.
How many supervisors actually do them? Are you through?
I mean,
I don't mean to interrupt. You still have the floor. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But with the question, I mean, it was being done routinely in the operations I saw when I worked here, but that was, a few years ago, not that long ago, a few years ago. But it would be a good practice if we continue that. So, but I yield. I yield.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. If we're gonna say that supervisors should get down and get in with the employees, I mean, I believe strongly in making sure the employees are heard and we're getting the best employee experience we can get. So anything we can come up with to do that. Did you have your hand up to answer my
I
question?
was just gonna say that I do know that tag ups are done throughout the county.
Okay.
I don't have accounts. I don't know exactly who, but I know that there's reference to them often. And I have them with my staff as well.
I don't believe you can lead without going into where the troops are and and watching it. So I mean, it's
And-
just my personal feeling.
That's
So-
one of the things Living as a Leader taught as well, was to be visible, to be out on the floor with the people so that you hear them, you talk with them. The tag ups are a one-on-one with the employee, talk about issues that they're running into, things that things that are coming up that you want to give them the heads up on. It's just more informal meeting between the manager and the employee. But the being visible is being out on the floor and stopping and talking to the payroll specialist or the HR people or whoever happens to be there. It could be a personal conversation to get them just comfortable and know what's going on in their lives, or it could be situations that they're running into. They're frustrated with something and that may come out in those conversations, but being visible then makes you more approachable.
I agree. Supervisor Kirby.
So like, if these conversations aren't happening, so let's say you have a supervisor for whatever reason isn't doing these regular tag ups, they aren't talking to their employees regularly, or maybe their employees don't feel like they can talk to them. How do we know that? How do we keep track of that? Is there a way?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah, is there a way for an employee to say, hey, I'm not getting regular communication without fear of reprisal?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, our business partners are entrenched in the work groups that they serve. All of our business partners have offices in the facilities where they're at, and they are present, and they're available to those employees. And employees do visit with business partners. They also can go up, talk to their supervisor's manager. We have open door policy throughout the county, and given what we have going on, I think vast majority of our employees are comfortable coming forward.
Okay.
Okay. I think what I took most from this letter was not pointing fingers and not trying to get into that. It was more, I'm genuinely concerned with morale issues. And to read this, it's concerning to me. So, Director Billingsley, this is to you. I mean, how do you feel the morale is in Public Works, and what are the steps being taken, or are there any, or what? I mean, if you could answer that, I'd appreciate it.
I think morale across all boards of government are definitely an issue. I think trying to get them to feel appreciated is something we have been working on, small steps. I have a yearly appreciation luncheon now where we've taken the pictures of the group and we've used those in certain instances in promoting Public Works and helping promote the activity that they're doing that not everybody may see. Taking an opportunity when I go and speak at school groups, what Public Works means, and trying to get kids involved and want to become more public servants, because it's gonna be a problem if people don't have that morale. I give out birthday cards for my entire group. Every month we do a birthday card. They get a little treat with that. I thank them for their service. So we're trying to take little steps for that. We do a pizza party that, we donate. The last pizza party we had is a welcome. I paid pizza. So I'm trying to do some things that we can do as a group to try to make the camaraderie between our departments better too. Is that going to make everybody happy? Probably not. I was kind of surprised by some of the stuff I read in the email and had some investigations and some things that I was made aware of. But yes, I think morale, no matter where we go, it's something we have to be conscious of regardless, and I believe wholeheartedly that I'm trying to make an effort in what I can with the minimal things that we have. I mean, we don't have the ability to add thousands of dollars to the budget to give incentive raises. It's just not in the government power. So I'm trying to do little things and, I have written down some ideas. I think a survey is probably a great start to see, who's happy with what, or if there's small things that we can incorporate. Besides maybe a birthday card and say thank you more often.
I think the important thing is you and then who's under you, then your supervisors, and here's the employees. There needs to be that connection. So I think, as I said to Patty, I think you need to lead by getting, and I'm not saying you, I'm just using you as a you. I mean, me, I could say me. I think that it should be, I'd like to know Public Works, whether these are being done, whether your supervisors are meeting with the employees and just talking with them, and if someone's pissed, let's see what we can do. If we can't do anything, we can't do anything. But I think these conversations need to be had. So okay, go ahead.
Can I answer that?
Sure.
And like Claire said, my door is always open. I've had employees come up and tell me things that I was surprised to hear and did my investigation on it. I don't know, some employees just aren't comfortable in that aspect. And I think, like Supervisor had mentioned, maybe a survey is an idea for that. But we do have an open door policy. And I tell my supervisors all the time, I'm going to check on some of the employees and have these one-on-ones and do these appreciation to try to give them a way to address us in a less formal way. Have I seen a lot of people coming out of their shell to explain some issues? No, but I'm hoping as we become more and more familiar, that can happen. So I hope that address some of that as well.
Executive Kirkman.
I do want to comment because thank you for the opportunity to comment. It is really important to me. Our employees are what make Kenosha healthy. They really do. It is hard. I had a personal loss 2 weeks ago with the county exec just north of here, and he made.
Can you project? I can't.
So the county exec just north of here passed away 2 weeks ago tomorrow. And his motto when he started was he wanted to make Racine County a fun place to work. And people who were at the Council of Governments or the bi-county meeting heard that comment. And we kind of bantered back and forth because I want to make Kenosha County a fun place, to work and play and raise your family. And we try to be active. I go into all departments. I spend a lot of time on the highway department. I was there the second day I got elected. So I have an open door policy and we do try. The things I wanted to mention in addition to the newsletter that Shelley's got going out, we did the Bring Your Children to Work Day. And I have to say, Public Works knocked it out of the park with how fun that day was. And it included all the managers coming up with ideas and the kids got involved from bingo to build a bridge, to build a city. I mean, they really went up above and beyond. And I know that people down here had done some projects, which I just got a rock from one of the employees' children. Again, those are the types of things that you're trying to do is build what is county government so we can pass it on to the next generation. It is hard. I talk to the highway department on a regular basis. And I try to bring ideas forward. And again, I don't have the funds to do everything they really want downstairs, but I try and I know what their issues are. And again, we continue to bring them forward. I try to make small increments. And we did a great job last year with the class and comp. I negotiated for health insurance premiums that were the lowest. I know in Racine County, they pay 15% of their health insurance premiums. They might have a little bit more of a raise, but they also then pay more in their insurance. So those are things that people might not necessarily look at as apples to apples and really trying to project. And again, I do have an open door policy. I've had employees call me about certain situations and I try to go to the manager or the director that's in charge and we work together to solve the problem.
I can respect an open door policy, but that's reactive. I like the proactive of getting with the employees and that type of thing. So who had their hand up here? Supervisor Brookhouse.
So reading this is kind of disturbing to me. Is this accurate? Is there any way to know if what this person is writing is accurate? Is that of value to know whether this, what they're saying here is valid?
Hey, since you're addressing this to me, I'll answer that. I think some of what's in there is accurate. The max pay, which I'll get into, it is, I mean, it's a discussion we need to have. The biggest piece of this email, the mechanic thing, I found to not be correct because the mechanic, he actually is a mechanic teacher and did have a mechanic background before the individual went to corrections. So, I mean, you know, again, it's anonymous. Not everything in there is fact. I'm not even saying that the most of it is fact. I'm just saying it gives us something to look into. And I mean, I've met with Clara and I've talked with people and I've got some answers to my questions. I still think that there are some issues with the max pay stuff, and I think there's morale issues. That's most of what I take from this letter. And we're going over the morale issues right now and trying to brainstorm and see what we can do with that. The max pay thing is on my radar. That's coming next, but that's kind of what I got out of this to answer your question. And Supervisor Belsky, if you'd like to add to that.
Yes, yesterday, Chair Grady and myself, Public Works, met with Director Billingsley and her staff. And we went line item by line item. And we got very conclusive answers from HR, from finance. We actually talked to new hire Greg Folt, and he explained why he came in where he did, what he requested in order to come to this position. But we met for 2 hours and we went over it thoroughly. And we found that the only thing to be of any truth was the max pay, and there are reasons around that. And we found that some of the issues sounded very familiar to an individual that was recently terminated. And its emails have been sent previously with the same scenarios. I think also we have to realize that Act 10 really impacted the guys in the shop. When Act 10 was implemented, they lost their union. They lost the STEP program. And so when we do these adjustments, the guys were used to, if they were at a high level step 4, they'd go to a high level step 5. That's not the case anymore. Doesn't work like that. And they don't have a union to represent them. So I think some of those morale issues, if we really get down and talk with the guys that have the concerns about why am I stuck at this level when new people that we're trying to attract are coming in at a higher level, I think we need to have those honest discussions with them. And so I found that it's unfortunate that somebody feels that they can go out and say whatever they want about anybody. But we, Chair Grady and I both found that line item by line item was false except for max pay.
Anybody else? Okay, let's get into this max pay a little. Clara, why don't you, I have some questions right now. Why don't you explain why you would hire our new hires at max pay, where, you know, how many of these max pays we have? What's the situation with that?
Hiring someone at the top of a pay grade happens very seldomly. First of all, the ability to hire someone over midpoint has to be approved by the county executive. I don't have the authority. That goes go to the county executive. And you know, there's a few a year. With the exception of Brookside, it's right in the policy that you can hire at any point in the pay grade that we need to for that flexibility and ability to be nimble there. Generally, you'll see that with a higher level position. So director level, you want to hire someone who is highly skilled, experienced. They're often coming from another position where they're being paid at a high level. There's competition for those employees, and those salaries are often negotiated.
How many max pay people are hired? How many times do we go over mid pay range for an employee and not a supervisor? Roughly, I mean, come on. Does it happen?
Yeah.
Maybe 5 times, it's not been often.
Yeah.
So zero, it doesn't happen?
No,
She said 5 times.
Yeah, just a handful of times a year, I would say. Because again, I have to take those to the county executive for approval, so, you know. But there's, you know, today we have, very low unemployment. Many people would say an unhealthy level of low unemployment. It's full employment, it's your full employment. It's a very competitive employment market. Now that is easing up some. We are seeing more applicants to our positions. A little bit more qualified applicants for our positions, which is the place we want to be. Because we always want to get the most qualified person for the job. Whenever we can bring someone who is experienced for the job that we are looking to fill, that is to our benefit. It reduces the amount of training that we need to do. So we seek the most qualified candidates. And again, when we're talking about director level positions, there's significant competition, especially if they've got public sector experience. Again, that's in a generally smaller pool of applicants. And we need to be competitive, and we need to be able to attract those.
I knew you were gonna say that. Okay, that's fine. I can live with that. So. Yeah, I'm still going. I'm just getting started here. So Public Works terminations by status by reason. And I've got this here, and I've also got this that you gave me a response to my question regarding the number of Public Works employees who have left, and it says 37 on here. Since 8/1/22, right? That says that. And I'm looking at this 2018 to 7/8/2024. And if I go to where this started at 8/1/22, I come up with 70. How can that be?
Okay, so this,
This?
I want to make sure you're looking at that correctly, because in 2022, we broke it out by quarter.
Right.
Because there was, you know, a request for a specific time of year.
Right.
But we need to look at the totals and not add all of these together.
Yeah, you might. So I'm looking at Q2 being done, and so
2022, so the total is here, but that total is broken out underneath it. And then 2023, the total is there, and that number's from.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Didn't read the fine print. All right, good. You got me there. All right. So internal versus external hires. Why don't you go over that with me for a second? I mean, do we put more of a preference on hiring internally, or not, or what? I mean, and I'm not asking this because I want to judge. I want to know what that looks like.
Equally qualified candidates. Yes, there is we look at that, those internal candidates. Again, our goal is the most qualified candidate.
Right. So basically it's qualifications is what you're telling them.
Yeah, that's first. And I will point out, something else that was mentioned in this. We do have a policy. If someone goes to a lower rated job, they, depending on where their current pay rate is, they go to the top of that lower pay grade. They move into a lower rated job. So that is just policy.
My next question was answered pretty much. Who has the final say in hiring? You're saying everything over halfway through the step system, it goes to the executive. That's what you're telling me. Yeah.
Right, with the exception of Brooks.
And then the rate of pay is, I mean, if anything is not up to that level, you're determining the rate of pay.
Yes, the HR works with the hiring manager to determine rate of pay. And of course, the candidate has to get rolling in. They're looking, if they're demanding something other than.
So another thing I kind of took out of this and maybe moved it forward in my mind, the issue pertaining to morale with seasoned and tenured employees. And then you have higher paid new employees. Do we have a lot of that going on? Because I could see if I worked for 10 years and I'm at this and somebody's coming in and they're making this and I'm training them, I've got a little animosity there. I mean, how often does that occur? Again, I'm not saying it does, or I'm curious.
We try to avoid that. When we're looking at what a candidate might negotiate, we're looking at what experience they bring to the table. So, more often, someone is negotiating a higher salary or rate in a position that, again, is at a higher level, and there's typically one person in that role, or, you know, a limited number of people in that role. I know it was difficult with particularly patrol workers a few years ago, when it was very difficult. It started to get very difficult to hire. There was an interest to find experienced candidates, of course.
Are you talking about sheriff's deputies? Or?
No, I'm.
Oh. Okay.
So, as when it's an employee market and they're looking to negotiate a different starting rate, we were looking at their experience. And again, we tried to avoid a situation where we have a current employee who would be making less than that. Does it never happen? No, I can't say.
When did we implement the last study, or
Class
2023?
It was July 2nd of 2023.
Okay. And when was the time before that? Do you recall?
Well, we would look at jobs that would need to get looked at each year. We did a study in, say, 2019, where we did a little over half of the positions for that.
I thought we did half and then we did the other half the next. Didn't we?
Well, then we did another chunk the next year. Yeah.
So every 3 to 5 years, we kind of look at that is based on what you're telling me.
Again, we look at things every year. So when
I know, but having a classification study, I'm sure you look at things all the time, every time you get an application.
So again, you'll see me looking to fund a market study refresh. So we would do that work in 2025 or 1/1/26.
All right, well, I am personally satisfied with the answers I've gotten and with where we are. I still think there's ways to improve, but I also think listening to employees, whether people think they're disgruntled or not, or anonymous or not, I think we owe it to the employees to listen and work with them. And I hope that the leadership got some ideas from this and can take it back and see some change with that. That I'll yield and
You asked my question, so thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Gearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say that what we're talking about here, there's nothing unique about this. I mean, you know that I started here in 1985. I worked here 33 years. And even in the days when we had collective bargaining, one group would question the compensation package of the other group. And then when Act 11 happened and collective bargaining was eliminated for most groups, same thing happened. We had a circumstance where the sheriff found a way to induct overtime into the pay in the previous administration. So there's nothing this is just a constant challenge that HR has. I think we lean into our class and comp, that's best practice, that's the way to address this. And, but again, this has been going on for all the decades that I was here. I'm sure it was going on before I was here, and it'll continue to go on, and we just need a good HR process that we should support, the board should support, in order to address this issue and make sure we're in the best position to recruit the best team to work here. And that, with that, I yield.
Supervisor Gama.
Thank you. I wasn't not able to make the meet and greet that happened yesterday because I was working, but probably for HR. So question, is it possible, probably not, but I'll ask anyways, to get the contact information of these employees? I can contact them myself, or is that HR?
Well, what employees?
Of the hang on, I'm sorry.
Anonymous.
Right, but like the ones, I'm looking at the sentence here, this guy, person, saying something about not having enough people to, it would be no, I know it's exaggerated and everything, but.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into names or anything like
Sure.
that, so.
So, rephrase my question. Would the best way to talk to the employees of Public Works would be to go to like a open house or meet and greet that they do, or can I give my contact information to Director Billingsley and say, hey, any employees that want to speak to a supervisor, I'm available. You know what I mean? Would that be the best way to contact?
So I'm just going to put this out as the county lawyer, and I don't want to speak for the HR director or the administration. It is not really the job of the board to be dealing with individual employees. That is the job of the administration. I'm not saying you can't speak with employees, obviously. I'm not saying that if employees reach out to you, you can't speak with them. But it is not the job of the board to manage or administer on a day-to-day basis. That is the job of the administration. I guess I'll leave it at that, and I'll defer perhaps to Clara.
Again, I'm not gonna prevent, I'm not gonna say you can't, and I have no control. I mean, any constituent can reach out to the elected official. If there's information you want to specifically request from me.
Okay, I'll talk to you after that. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Supervisor Kirby.
So I've just got one more. Do we do anything for the employees, like putting out, this is your total compensation package? Because I think a lot of times people don't realize how valuable their health insurance and retirement benefits are, and it's helpful to see that.
Yes.
Just to see, okay, maybe I'm not making as much as if I worked in Racine, but you know, we're paying so much more towards the health insurance.
Yes, our HRIS is done Dayforce. You can access it anytime. It's right there.
That's nice.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Audit of bills was passed around. Do we have that?
You're the only one.
Come on, really?
Yeah.
Reports from the Department of Administration. Anything?
That's the general fund report.
All right. So this month be the first general fund report we have for 2024. I will present these each month going forward all the way through April of next year. So the format is a full review of everything in the budget and reviewing material differences from the budget to actual and projecting that out. So if you look at the box in the bottom, I usually will start there and it shows that we're basically at break even at this point. A wonder, but many months to go forward. The percentages that show there, we always like to show the percentage of the general fund compared to the unassigned reserves, I should say, as a percentage of the general fund expense. We like to keep that above 30. By policy, the county board has a target at 30%. The general fund expenditures figure is an increase from last year to make sure that that percentage makes sense. So I'll go through the detail here. So on the top are items that would cause increases to the general fund. So for human services and public works, they're conservatively showing some surpluses here. There's miscellaneous catch-all for lots of other smaller things. General fund interest, investment interest that I've already spoken to in the prior resolution. Much more analysis will be done in order to determine what needs to be done for 2025 budget, but at this point, we're looking at a projected surplus there for this year. The category of circuit court, county clerk, and register of deeds revenue, projecting a surplus over those three. Not in register of deeds, but overall between the three. Tax delinquencies reserve, that's based on collections, and overall that's an estimate that is adjusted each month. The vacancy surplus is typical at this point of the year, and that will reduce as time goes on. And then we have some projected surpluses in workers' comp and liability insurance. On the lower part of the analysis here, it shows we have sheriff department operating deficit, expenditures deficit. The areas that are showing deficits at this point are inmate medical and jail related variable expenses, food, supplies, and some in overtime.
So you're telling me 600,000 inmate medical and jail food?
If we project it out from now, doubling it, but there's some significant, especially in inmate medical, are blowing the budget. And that's why it was on my 2025 projection that we're going to have to shore that up. Sales tax revenue deficit. We only have 4 months worth of sales tax figures at this point. Like I said, we're about even with last year, so we're trending below budget. Health insurance deficit of 400,000. There in claims, we're seeing a significant surplus. However, we're seeing a deficit on the prescription side. So we're working to manage that. There's a large increase in specialty drugs, as you've probably heard, and we're working to manage that, to bring that hopefully down by the end of the year. There's the 300,000 that is budgeted as part of using reserves. That has to be included as part of this analysis. Sheriff's operating revenue deficit has to do with a couple of the inmate, the federal marshal inmate revenues coming in lower than budget, and that might have to be shored up as part of the 2025 budget. And then there's some smaller treasurer revenue having to do with tax deeded, or I should say, interest and penalty on taxes. But overall, no material items negatively or at this point conservatively we show large material surpluses, but overall a good first report. We'll be providing this as part of our rating agency presentation at the end of the month, and then like I said, I'll be updating this each month, and we can get into the more details as we go through the rest of the year and get more accurate numbers. Yes, as the year goes on, the numbers get sharper and sharper.
Yes. Anything else
That's it.
from administration? Any questions or comments? Have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Supervisor Nudo, second by Supervisor Geertz. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you all for the meeting and your questions.